Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of Speaking with Confidence with Kat Matson, the show where I show you humble, impact minded leaders, also known as corporate hippies, how to speak in a way that lands your message while you still feel authentic, you still feel yourself, and you're not feeling like you need to perform or do mental cartwheels in order to land your message. So, welcome. It's awesome to have you here. Now, I'm going to dive straight into today's episode because I think this is one of those things that us women in particular do more than our fair share of. We second guess and we overthink, how do we be emphatic? How do we make a recommendation? How do we contribute our expertise without sounding like we're being, a little bit demanding? Because goodness knows, nobody wants to feel like we're being demanding or bossy or telling people what to do, right? So this particular conversation came up recently in my Communicate with Impact program. And one of my participants, she was talking about how the challenge that she has is she's sitting in her team meetings. They're remote team meetings, which adds to, I think, the complexities. And she often wants to make a recommendation. In fact, that's her job. Her job is to make recommendations about how things happen in the business. And she was explaining to us in the call that what she struggles with is she's really clear on on the recommendation that she wants to make, but she also wants everybody's opinions and she doesn't want to seem like she's pushy or bossy. And so she ends up opening up this discussion and everybody has all of these ideas. And then by the time everyone's got their ideas and their opinions and their perspectives, she's lost control of the conversation and she feels like she then has to engineer everyone back to the recommendation that she originally wanted to make. And as we were unpacking this, what became really clear to me was that this wasn't just a messaging issue, and I'll talk about that in a second, but it was also a perception issue. And the perception was very much, I don't want to be seen to be shutting other people down. I want everyone to feel good about the recommendation. I want everyone to feel like they've contributed. Here's the thing. Not everything needs everybody else's contribution. So what I want to talk about today is how can we make our recommendations? How can we be the experts in the room? How can we contribute according to what it is that we are in the room to contribute to? Give space for people to object or to add extra pieces on, but not to be doing it in such a way that people feel like we don't have the answers. So I feel like in order to do this one justice, we need to start with a little bit of mindset. It's not uncommon really, is it, to start with a little bit of mindset? At a macro level, at a big global level, I often joke with people that a democracy doesn't mean consensus. Democracy means majority. Now, of course, in a team meeting, we're not necessarily talking about democracy issues or a democracy sausage side issue. We're not talking about democracy, but I do wonder whether that's what contributes to this reluctance to just tell people what we think. We want consensus. We want everyone agreeing with us, going, yeah, that's a great idea. I've got a hot tip for you. Unless you're talking about cupcakes for breakfast or bacon for lunch, you're not necessarily going to get consensus. This desire for consensus could come from a number of different places. It could come from wanting to look nice, wanting to be accepted by everyone, not wanting to look bossy. I mean, we could literally spend hours talking about the need for us to look nice. But in the context of getting things done in professional conversations, I want to be really clear that being nice does not mean that you have to get everyone's opinion on everything, and being nice does not mean that everyone has to agree with you. You can still be a nice person and do something that not everyone agrees with. Ask me how I know. I mean, that's what leadership's about, isn't it? Leadership is about making decisions that are for the best for the organisation, the best for the team, the greatest good for the greatest number. And sometimes that means that it's not good for other people. So, with that mindset shift, what do we then need to do in order to speak with authority without sounding bossy, without sounding demanding, without thumping the table and stamping our feet? Well, I think the next piece is it's related to the mindset. It's okay to be the expert in the room. It's okay for you to step into your role, whatever that role is, as that subject matter expert and say, based on my experience, this is my recommendation. Based on my expertise, I recommend we do this. Looking at all of the data, I recommend that this is the action that we take. It's not about asking the kids what they want for dinner. It's about telling them this is what's for dinner, or it's about telling them this is what we're going to do next. And I can completely understand this need, and I've done this myself. I completely understand this need to want to have everybody feel like they've been included. And in fact, I would argue that that's a key part of change management, for example, or transformational leadership. You're wanting people to contribute, but not on everything, not on every detail. And so sometimes it is just about saying, this is my recommendation. Not what I'd really like to do is perhaps, if we think about this and what do you think? That's not it. It's this is my recommendation. Now, I appreciate that being that, I'm going to call it authoritative rather than assertive, being that authoritative and owning our expertise and making direct recommendations can feel uncomfortable, particularly if we're not used to it. If we're needing to work on shedding our nice girl routine or our, get on with everyone routine, we might need to transition to being more direct in our recommendations. So how do I suggest you do that? Well, you can say things like, I'm thinking about doing this, and that's what I'm going to do unless anyone has any objections. Or, based on my experience and based on what we saw last time, my recommendation would be that we do this. Any objections? That way of saying it, I'm thinking, this is my recommendation, you're still owning that it's your opinion, but it's your expert opinion, it's your informed opinion. And then asking if there are any objections, it shifts the conversation. It shifts the conversation away from does anyone have an opinion? And of course, everyone has opinions about freaking everything, right? Whether they're informed or not. But asking if there's an objection, it's like, well, do I care? That sounds good. Let's give it a go. Now, I want to comment here that some assertiveness training would tell you not to use a phrase like I'm thinking because it diminishes your credibility or your authority. They would probably also argue not to say something like unless anyone has an objections, because similarly it could be seen, or they would argue that it could be seen to be undermining your authority. I disagree. In a context where particularly a lot of our meetings are online and we don't have the same strength of in-person relationships, we don't have the opportunity to build trust in the soft conversations that happen in the tea room or in the lunchroom, and all of our interactions are happening in structured, get things done meetings, we need to find different ways to be personable and to be connected and to also practice new ways of communicating in relatively structured setups. And so, I think about all of my workplace experience. You would have those soft conversations in the corridors, or you'd wander over to someone's desk and say, hey, what do you think about this? And you'd bounce it all around. We don't do that as much anymore. And so we're having to do that in get things done meetings, but that means that we're not practicing our communication. We're not getting feedback on our ideas until it's time for a decision. And we're also not getting all the benefits of all of the body language cues. So in the context of all of that and what I would call the different interaction, or that the different interpersonal relationships we now have in the workplace, I don't think there's any harm in softening your authoritative approach. I don't think there is any harm in saying, I'm thinking that we should do this based on the research, or I'm thinking we should do this based on the last few times that we did something else. And I also don't think there's any harm in not being the authority, rather demonstrating your authority and still being soft enough to be approachable. I also think that whatever you need to do to transition from asking for consensus, asking for opinions, going into meetings, wanting to facilitate an outcome through discussion rather than just making recommendations, if that's the transition that you're making, then whatever helps you mentally make that transition is worth it. And this is one of the issues that I have with a lot of assertiveness training. It doesn't take into account that transition, and nor does it take into account the changes that we've seen in recent years with our interpersonal workplace relationships. The other thing that I think, as I wrap this particular piece up, is recognizing too that a lot of that asking permission, or a lot of that asking for other people's input, can sometimes come from imposter syndrome, that belief that we're not credible enough, or we're not experienced enough, or we're not expert enough to be making the recommendation. I've talked about that many times, but I will link to a particular episode. In fact, it's one of the earliest episodes I've done of Speaking with Confidence, where I talk about that very notion of, who do I think I am? Why me? Why am I the one who is giving this advice? So I'll link that in the show notes and you can have a listen. So I'm curious, how does this play out for you when you're trying to make recommendations? Are you facilitating a discussion in the hope that it will land where you want it to land? Or are you making a recommendation and listening for significant objections? I'd love to know. Best place to have a conversation with me is either in the comments of whatever platform you're listening to this podcast on, if the platform that you're listening on has comments, Spotify, YouTube, etc., Substack. If it doesn't, if you can't leave a comment on the platform that you're listening on, find me on Instagram at Kat Matson. That's cat with a C, meow, and with T in the middle of Matson. The other thing that I want to let you know about too is my How to Stop Rambling masterclass. It's an on-demand masterclass, and I'm not going to be doing this for much longer, but I'm currently offering it for free. And the feedback that I've been receiving, it's fantastic, because it's not just the techniques, it's understanding why you ramble, why you lose your words, why you doubt yourself. And there's 5 different archetypes that I walk you through that ramble more than perhaps you might like. And each of those archetypes, each of those causes has a different rambling antidote. So if you're listening to this and you're like, yeah, Kat, one of actually my problems is not so much asking permission, it's just by the time I get to my actual point, I've completely lost my audience because I've been rambling and I've gone off on all of the tangents and I don't know what I was talking about, and I lose them all and I go, squirrel. If that's you, then check out the How to Stop Rambling Masterclass. The link is in the show notes. Thank you again for tuning in. I hope this has been a useful exercise for you. Let me know if there's a question that you have that you would like me to answer in an upcoming episode. Not only will I answer it, but I will let you know when I've answered so you know which episode to listen to. Until then, have a fantastic time doing whatever it is that you're doing. And here's to confidence and here's to impact. I'll see you soon.